Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a lot of news to get to today in the show. And before we do that, first, we certainly wanted to take a moment to take actually a live look at the memorials that are happening here in D.C. and in New York. You can see them on screen. That's the Pentagon on the bottom there, and then that's New York in the upper screens.
Now, today marks 24 years since September 11th, 2001. Nearly 3,000 people in New York, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania were killed that day in attacks.
So you're seeing these memorial sites live there, as I said, today as we remember, of course, those who lost their lives 24 years ago in 9/11. It's a really important thing always to reflect on that every year.
Yeah, and growing up in New York, I think we all can remember, we're old enough to remember that moment. So in addition, it's been a tumultuous news cycle just in the last 24 hours. And so I know that you really wanted to talk about Charlie Kirk's life in your radar today. So why don't you start with that?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lindsay. Well, you've likely heard the horrifying news that we just alluded to. An assassin's bullet has struck down Charlie Kirk, the prominent conservative commentator and founder of Turning Point USA, while he was speaking at an event at Utah Valley University on Wednesday. Now, he was just 31 years old and leaves behind a wife and 2 young children. Graphic video footage of this killing, which occurred as Kirk addressed a large outdoor crowd of students and supporters. It shows him being shot in the neck. He was, of course, rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately did not recover. Now, this shocking tragedy has prompted an outpouring of lamentations from Kirk's many friends in conservative media and also in Republican politics. Announcing his death on Truth Social, President Donald Trump wrote that Kirk was great and even legendary. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie, wrote Trump. Trump is right. Kirk's influence among right-leaning young people is difficult, frankly, to even translate into words. Kirk launched Turning Point USA in 2012 with financial backing from a Tea Party activist. The organization's stated goal was to foster a conservative movement on college campuses. Following in the footsteps of past groups such as Young Americans for Freedom, Charlie Kirk was adept at creating catchy slogans and useful talking points for conservative students to deploy against left-wing thinkers. He popularized the phrase, "socialism sucks," and added it to t-shirts, posters, and also banners. He took advantage of dramatically increased interest in crazy campus happenings among the broader American public, and he encouraged dissenting kids to challenge their liberal professors, form right-leaning organizations, and also invite Republican speakers to campus. Now, under Kirk's leadership, the group became the undisputed king of conservative campus activism, helping turn thousands of non-liberal students into fans of the Republican Party and also its rising stars like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and of course, Donald Trump himself. Kirk, too, became a prominent star known for his debate me bro persona. But importantly, he did not confine himself to the company of the already converted. And he seemed to enjoy venturing into the fray and arguing with liberals and leftists. The more of them at once, the better. Take a look.
Do you think men can give birth?
I think that...
yes or no question?
I think that a person who is assigned male at birth, I don't think they
Assigned male at birth, so people are not male at birth?
I think that a person...
See, your evidence that college is a scam, my friend.
So what do you say in some cases women with IUDs are murderers?
Of course not, they're not murderers.
So what's the difference between an IUD killing a conceived zygote and like a mother going to Planned Parenthood and killing the fetus in her womb?
That was actually the best point somebody made.
It's not about the cells.
No,
it's not about... No, I'm speaking. 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 No, I'm speaking.
That clip is very characteristic of Kirk. He had the strength of his convictions, but he had fun while carrying out those convictions. Now, at the time of his death, Kirk was actually scheduled to debate the leftist commentator Hassan Piker. Piker deplored Kirk's Kirk's killing and has warned against future violence, and I'm very happy to see him do that. Now, Charlie Kirk was also at the forefront of the conservative movement's conquest of independent alternative media spaces. He hosted his own podcast. He racked up millions of views and listeners and downloads on YouTube, Spotify, and other platforms where conservative media personalities have thrived. Now, while he is far from the only right-wing figure to take advantage of the changing media landscape, it would be hard to overstate his impact on the overall trajectory of the Republican Party, youth activism, and also conservative communications. The current crop of MAGA influencers on TikTok, on Instagram, on X, some of whom now regularly appear at White House press briefings, displacing more traditional media figures, they are the inheritors of the ecosystem that he built. The murder of an extremely influential political figure is usually an occasion for reckless commentary from all sides of the political spectrum. One MSNBC commentator odiously implied that Kirk brought this on himself by employing hateful rhetoric. And meanwhile, some right-wing figures clearly see his assassination as an opportunity to launch a broad assault against all sorts of political enemies. But it is during moments like this, when the temptation for ghoulish overreach is most appealing to political figures, that it's helpful to keep one thing in mind. In the U.S., political violence is blessedly rare. People do not generally kill one another because they disagree about politics. That is a good default status and one worth preserving. There would be no better way to honor Kirk's love of debate and discussion than to remind everyone that Americans should settle their differences with words, not with violence. And Lindsey will be talking, of course, later in the show about other reactions to his death, and then, of course, the ongoing manhunt to find his killer, who is still at large, which is very unnerving.
I was surprised that the killer was still at large. Yeah. I think it's important to look at Charlie Kirk objectively and his life and what he was able to accomplish. We're talking about a 31-year-old, which is fairly young, should be young to most people. At 18, he really started this path. But then also, he's partly or largely credited for the reason that Trump chose J.D. Vance as his running mate. So not only did he create his own ecosystem of political capital, he also was extremely influential in making decisions as the Republican Party, which is a conversation about how young people's voices can get heard. I mean, anybody who's able to galvanize that many people on college campuses and really, provide a voice. And then also, I love people that are able to get in the room and debate and be uncomfortable. Obviously, there's so many conversations going on around Charlie Kirk, but I think it's important to understand what he was able to accomplish separate from any feelings about it, and notice the doors that are open for people that maybe didn't align with the standard or the status quo, because there's a lot of people in politics now that are criticized because they're going along with how they go. But he even didn't want Ronna McDaniel at the RNC, and then she was gone. And so he's one of those people that, as you want a voice in politics and what's happening, built it from the ground up. And I think that that's something that people should look at as you continue to try to make change with your words and actions. That's something that he actively was trying to do, whether you disagree or agree with him.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. His achievements are just staggering. When he came onto the scene and started Turning Point USA, there were a number of right-leaning campus organizations, and he outcompeted the other ones. He built the default, the best conservative student organization. The events he put on were spectacular. So they introduced, he got people to show up. He got students all over the country to come to his events, to learn about what Republicans believe, what the MAGA movement is, as it was rising, as it was coming along, to learn about this Republican figure and this conservative figure. That was good for fostering students who were going to become good movement conservatives, good for fostering talent on the talent side of Republican speakers. They upped their game because you had to perform well at these kinds of events. And then, of course, the effect, as you're saying, on alternative media and finding different voices. And that is the thing I think he'll be most remembered for, and that people should really pay attention to him for, is his love of the fight, the with words, not with violence, with words, persuading people. He loved it. He so enjoyed going in there, being surrounded by people he disagreed with and arguing with them. And so many people, so many commentators, so many people of our kind of caliber just play it safe. We don't, because we disagree.
We argue.
And we mix it up.
But it's also historically extremely difficult to galvanize young people to get out to vote and to be civically engaged. That's just the bottom line. The history of our country shows that those are not the biggest voting bloc. Yeah. So the fact, and as I learned even more about what he was able to do with young people, I think that's something that even as commentators, Democrats, people within politics should look at and see, how do you galvanize a vote? Well, he was showing you how to do it on one side. So
he presided over a significant shift toward the right, toward Trump among Gen Z. That it really is to his credit that took place. Next up, we'll obviously be getting into more details of the shooting and the ongoing manhunt, and also some of the tributes and reactions in the media. Please stay with us. More to come on Rising. The investigation into the killing of 31-year-old conservative activist Charlie Kirk is continuing.
Now, Kirk was speaking at Utah Valley University, the first stop in what was supposed to be a college campus speaking tour. The university says Kirk was hit by a bullet around 12:20 p.m. Utah time.
Here's Governor Spencer Cox at a press conference yesterday addressing this tragic situation.
I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are broken.
The Utah Department of Public Safety believes that the shooter engaged in a targeted attack and fired one shot from a nearby roof. A university spokeswoman says that the specific building was the Losi Center, which was about 150 yards from Kirk. Officials say that around 3,000 people were in that crowd. Now, Kirk's security detail was with him alongside 6 university police officers.
But as of this morning, a manhunt is still underway. Police detained 2 people yesterday, but released both of them. FBI Director Kash Patel had tweeted that the subject in the shooting was in custody at 6:20 p.m., but then he issued an update right before 8 p.m., writing, quote, "The subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to release information in interest of transparency." The FBI is now asking anyone with relevant information to step up.
Of course, social media was filled with reactions and tributes to Kirk's death. Here was President Trump last night.
This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever. The monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
Prominent conservative commentator Ben Shapiro wrote on X, "Charlie was a good man, a man who believed in right and wrong, who stood by his biblical values. All of us will miss him, and I can't imagine the pain of his beautiful young family. We must all pray for them. We must pick up the baton where Charlie left it, fighting for the things that he believed in so passionately."
California Governor Gavin Newsom also weighed in, writing, quote, "I knew Charlie, and I admired his passion and commitment to debate. His senseless murder is a reminder of how important it is for all of us across the political spectrum to foster genuine discourse on issues that deeply affect us all without resorting to political violence. The best way to honor Charlie's memory is to continue his work, engage with each other across ideology through spirited discourse. In a democracy, ideas are tested through words and good faith debate, never through violence."
Indeed.
For me, there's no world in which I watch a video like this, regardless of who's speaking, regardless of where they fall on a political spectrum, and are not extremely disturbed. I think it was just disgusting. I hope that the criminal that did this, who should be called all the words like a thug, somebody who did this should be arrested and caught immediately. I think that when you talk about what college stands for to me and why I argue so hard about things, and I don't want to change the topic into this, but argue for things like Harvard having free speech, free political speech, specifically when it makes any party uncomfortable, is because it is the place where ideas are breeded and discussed on purpose to leverage that to become people who affect our policy, business, both private and public in the future. And so when he's going to a college to talk to, inspire, or disagree with other young people, this is a terrible situation to happen that also creates this tone of fear in a place that's supposed to be completely free for thoughts like this. And there was even a petition, I think almost like 892 people signed it, close to 1,000 of that didn't want him to come. But the university was like, it doesn't matter because we are, not it doesn't matter, we hear you, but we are allowing us to be a free speech institution.
You get to object, but
you get to object and come. And some people still came there, and you heard from people who were in the audience. There were people who disagreed with him and there just to hear about some of those disagreements. But no political view should make you want to see someone die. And especially as somebody who's a mother, I believe he has a 2- and 4-year-old, and the audience can correct me if I'm getting those ages wrong. But as a mom, he has young kids and a wife. And so to me, it's just tragic to see somebody like this be killed in this way, and I just can't imagine anything other than just feeling disgust and wanting the criminal that did this to go to jail.
Well, and frankly, to quite literally see it, because the video footage of it was on social media, and I'm sure many of the viewers watching did this as well, without knowing what kind of state he was in. You know, you look for the videos, just not out of morbid curiosity, but because you want to know what kind of condition he's in. The video was graphic and appalling, and made it clear that
and
this was
there's a whole
very
conversation
serious
about kids watching this video.
Yeah,
on social media, everyone's
right.
can see the video.
And what I was going to say, and it follows a news cycle in which many of our same viewers, probably myself and yourself, but felt some obligation to watch the murder of the Irina Zarutska on the train just to better understand what happened. It feels like I've been watching a lot of death lately, and it's very desensitizing and alarming. So my feelings and sympathy go out to everyone in the audience who's had that same experience. I certainly hope this person is apprehended immediately. We live in a world of such surveillance, which certainly has its downsides, but one of the upsides of it is that it is easier than ever, generally, for law enforcement to apprehend a suspect. In this case, they got Luigi Mangione in a couple days, I think. So we're certainly expecting and hoping that will be a similar case here. I know there's already videos of showing someone on a roof, in the vicinity, and they have some general knowledge of how this transpired. It is, of course, and this is a warning I would give to people on all sides of the political spectrum, including some people on the right. We do not know why this happened yet. You can, of course, make assumptions, given Charlie Kirk being a high-profile conservative activist. But, of course, Trump was targeted by an assassin during the presidential campaign, and that person turned out to be a kind of psycho without a very clear, discernible political agenda. I don't want to say he has no political agenda. Right. The shooter of Gabby Giffords years ago did not have a clear political agenda. He was just a psycho. I'm not trying to be naive and say this person, I know for certain they don't have an agenda. We don't know. We don't know anything yet. So if you're going to start spouting off on how they are out to get you or us, there's not a they. There's also it's not, or already want to get into, this is why guns is bad, this is why rhetoric is bad. An individual is responsible for this. A person decided to do this. That person will be brought to justice, and then we will better understand why and how this happened. But let's stay squarely focused on the person for now. We don't need to do speculation or try to turn this into a them versus us. I don't know who the us is, and I don't know who the them is. Well, I know who the us is. I don't know who the them is.
Right.
So just cool it for now is what I would say.
And I say, like with Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman, that was killed in a political violence that could be directly connected to somebody's feelings on politics, or Nancy Pelosi's husband being attacked in the way that he was brutally. I think that all that deserves to have a conversation about how we can bring the political temperature down. But at the same time, Congress is created to have those debates. That's the whole point of Congress, to voice and vocalize the thoughts of the people and the constituents you represent, and go in there and duke it out with your words and conversation, as opposed to with any type of violence. And so I think the most spirited debates are welcomed in our country, the most spirited disagreements, because that's the whole point of having different voted elected officials.
And that's what Charlie Kirk stood for. So we're not going to stop having spirited disagreement because something like this happened. He would not have wanted that. He was for spirited disagreement. Words different than violence.
Exactly. So President Trump received some boos upon his visit to a D.C. restaurant. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about that next.
Free D.C. Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! Free D.C. Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! What do you want your legacy to be?
That's President Trump there staring down protesters at a D.C. restaurant as they were chanting that he was the, quote, Hitler of our time. The president was out to dinner with Vice President and Secretary Pete Hegseth to demonstrate how safe the capital city was after deploying the National Guard.
Many on the right are questioning why the Secret Service allowed the protesters to get anywhere near Trump. Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna posted on X, in part, how are they allowed to get that close to him? Where was Secret Service? Was there someone in Secret Service that leaked his location? This does need to be looked into. And then Laura Loomer went a step further. Someone at Secret Service needs to be fired for this one. Is there a Hamas sympathizer working at the U.S. Secret Service who let those rabid Hamas lovers inside while Trump was in the restaurant? We need to find out and expose them. This is unacceptable. POTUS could have been assassinated tonight.
Now, this incident comes after the Secret Service reportedly failed to detect a Glock in a guest's bag at Trump's Virginia golf course while he was visiting last month. Now, despite the bag being manually searched by agents, that agency has since launched a review of the incident. This was first reported by Susan Crabtree of Real Clear Politics. Now, as for the restaurant, the Secret Service did tell the Daily Beast in a statement, quote, all restaurant guests were screened prior to the president's arrival, including the protesters who had made a reservation to gain access. The situation inside the restaurant was quickly resolved by Secret Service personnel who were actively engaged in ensuring the president's safety, and the dinner continued without further incident.
So this news came too late to work its way into yesterday's show.
Yeah.
At which point we would have discussed it with, I think, more levity. Obviously, after the events of the last day, now I, more seriously, I'm sort of like,
everything has like a serious,
paying it? Yeah.
more serious term. But they seem like they made a reservation, but then it goes to some of the Republican Congress people's points is that how did they know that he was going to be at that restaurant? Why would they make protesters make a reservation? But then there's also, validity to our country being a place where protesting is allowed, right? While getting your message to the president is allowed. But, you don't want somebody around you in the Secret Service for something this small. It's not like he was speaking at a major engagement and getting protests.
I mean, it is a big restaurant. I've eaten at this restaurant.
Okay, I haven't been there, but from this point of view, it looks like, how did they get that close to his table? It seems like someone told him where he was going to be seated. I mean, they are like very close to him.
It's a big restaurant. It has a lot of different spaces. It has a large area where there's a lot of tables. There's a more private kind of event space that you could rent out for 50 people or something.
Okay. There's
another area. Actually, I had Thanksgiving dinner here.
Oh, nice. Fancy Thanksgiving.
It's a really nice restaurant. And actually, Trump went there, I think, because he was talking to a reporter, saying how safe the city is now. People are going back to restaurants, and the reporter said something like, "Well, how would you know? You eat at the White House. You've never eaten at a restaurant in D.C." And Trump said, "Well, that's true. Well, we could fix that. I could do it." And then he basically accepted the dare and went and visited this restaurant. There's other video footage, by the way, of him receiving plenty of cheers and handshakes from people who were dining there. So this was not by any stretch of the imagination a universally hostile reception. But
it didn't feel like a hostile protest either,
there's
though.
no way Code Pink was just eating there by chance.
Right. Somebody
knew he was going to be there.
But it doesn't have to be Secret Service. You know how many people, even in a tight-knit situation, I saw tons of people around him that weren't Secret Service. Like, anyone could have just mentioned that they were doing that, and then someone tells which is the president, so it's supposed to be highly sensitive. But, one person opening their mouth could lead to a protest being around your table. But making the reservation has to seem suspect to a restaurant, maybe. Wasn't it like midday also? So making all these reservations.
These, you're right that they have the right to protest, and that's fine. They didn't do anything beyond the bounds of the law. That's fine. Also, the restaurant owner can ask them to leave.
And everyone is a little tense right now. So I think, like you said, yesterday it was one thing, but today, I think just this week in general has raised the temperature in the country. And so hopefully the president in that moment, since he is safe, could bring it back down. Just say, I hear you. I'm just trying to enjoy my meal.
Let's all bring down the tension if we can. I think that would be very useful.
Now, tensions are escalating in Europe after NATO says it shot down Russian drones in Poland. That's in my lens, coming up next.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
We are talking about Poland. So when more than a dozen Russian drones flew into Poland overnight this week, NATO scrambled fighter jets to take them down. Western officials called it a, quote, dangerous escalation of war in Ukraine. And they're right, because this wasn't just another skirmish on the border. This was history. For the first time ever, NATO forces engaged enemy targets inside Allied airspace. That's not routine, that is a turning point. Now, Poland's Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, put it bluntly. He said, quote, we are dealing with large-scale provocation. Now, Russia claims it did not plan to hit Poland. That's a quote, suggesting its drones couldn't even reach that far. But that's simply just not true. And Poland isn't buying it either. The country has already doubled down on military spending and pledged to expand its armed forces to 500,000 troops. Now, Eastern Europe knows what's at stake. They've lived this story before. And here's the thing, Putin keeps escalating because he keeps getting away with it. As Ukraine's foreign minister put it on X, quote, Russian drones flying into Poland during the massive attack on Ukraine shows that Putin's sense of impunity keeps growing because he was not properly punished for his previous crimes. Yet instead of punishment, Putin is actually gaining power. He was just welcomed out of isolation, traveling all the way to Alaska in August at the invitation of President Trump for what the White House called a summit to end the war. That meeting ended actually with no progress, no concessions, not even a ceasefire. And days later, Putin launched his largest missile and drone barrage of the entire conflict in Ukraine. Now, meanwhile, Trump's strategy looks shaky at best. He hasn't unleashed the heavy sanctions his own administration has floated multiple times, and the delay just keeps happening. Chris Weaver, CEO of Macro Advisory in Moscow, told CNBC, quote, "The Russian budget is actually under a lot of pressure. So if there were to be any more significant sanctions targeting Russian oil trade from the U.S., which they've talked about but not done, that would put the budget under greater pressure." It hasn't happened. So Putin must feel free to flex. Just a few days after his Alaska meeting with Trump, he was pictured shoulder to shoulder with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un at a Chinese military parade. Think about that. The leaders of Russia, China, and North Korea standing in lockstep, a not so subtle message challenging U.S. power on the world stage. Meanwhile, Ukraine waits. Kiev has watched deadlines come and go, deadlines that Trump actually set himself, like the August 8th deadline for Russia to end fighting with no consequences for Moscow. Remember, he told us that he would solve the war in 24 hours while campaigning. Well, it's September 11th. The war is not only unsolved, it's escalating. And here's the reality. Putin's message is clear to Ukraine, to Europe, and to Trump. I won't back down. He wants us to believe that he alone can dictate and will dictate the terms of peace. Now, the real question is whether the West, and specifically the U.S., will let him.
Well, but my question is, okay, what is your plan? I'm all ears. You're right that Russia is not taking an offer of peace with the enthusiasm we wanted, and I am also troubled by the action in the Polish airspace. But what is the...
Well, I think we heard a few, so I think I'm listening to, I'm not a business expert, and I don't pretend to be. And so, therefore, people who actually operate in Russian, specifically Russian business expert. But when you operate in that space and you're a consultant in Russian territory and you go on CNBC and somebody tells you, yeah, I think the sanctions would actually put Russia at a disadvantage if Trump ever implemented them to the level he said he's going to do. I mean, Robby, that's your opinion that it won't work. But if Trump squeezes them and actually convinces other countries to stop doing business that are in NATO with Russia, then we'll be in a position where Russia now has to come to the table with a realistic solution.
No one can find an example of sanctions ever working.
They cannot ever continuously just say that Putin is allowed to do whatever he wants, especially when all the European leaders have come to the White House alongside Zelensky and said what their interests are. And so as we see them, so we're just going to allow him.
I don't like that it rained yesterday, but it did.
I know,
There's no power. I can be mad about it. I was mad about it. I got wet on the way here, but it's like, oh well, what can I do?
It's not as solidified as rain, right? We have no control over that. We do have control over allowing Putin to continue to just do whatever he wants, because at the end of the day, with multiple powerful countries involved and then just Russia, and just like we both understand quite well, Russia does not want a World War III, neither does the U.S. Europe is not interested in that. That's not on the table realistically for anyone. And so therefore, no, the option is to continue to move forward like you have some authority in the situation and not coddle somebody who is mocking you blatantly and over and repeatedly by even going recently to China to the military parade and just saying, standing with people that you know we don't like. The only fear that's realistic to me...
If tough guy rhetoric and sanctions were going to work, we would have already achieved the end of this conflict.
And if Trump's strategy was going to work, then we would have achieved anything. Nothing has changed. They actually have just escalated the war. And so what I'm saying is just attempt to listen to listen to all the European allies that are in NATO as he creeps into Polish airspace, which is our ally, and say, listen, we can't allow this, because what they suggested might happen when they went to the White House in August is actually happening. And so should we just allow it to happen? You said once Russia creeps into NATO territory, then we have to do something. Well, what do you call that?
If they attack Poland,
they didn't attack Poland,
and then we'll be at war.
But they didn't attack Poland, but they're just playing with the idea. So doesn't that look like mocking somebody who you just sat in Alaska with to say that you were coming to peace? Like, the first thing he could have done is try to push for a ceasefire. But President Trump just took it off the table after he met with Putin and just said, listen, Putin doesn't want to do that. Let's just end the war. And then weeks passed, and then he continued to barrage and drone strike Ukraine and did nothing, and then met with dictators, took a picture for one of the first times with all three of them together in history, and is still mocking you, and nothing's changing. And so how does that make you look when you went on the campaign trail and mocked Biden for his lack of solving this and said you can do it in 24 hours? Even if that was an overstatement, we are so far past the 24-hour deadline, months passed, and you've done nothing to change it. It's only escalated, and that's your friend,
it's not his,
right? That's his associate.
It's fault that it's escalating.
But that's his associate that he has such a great relationship with, right? So why is it not?
It's the leader of a rival country.
They both said they have a great relationship with one another. So what is wrong with your negotiating skills that we haven't gotten this done? Otherwise, try the sanctions is what I'm saying. Because you tried everything else and that's not working. Try the extreme dramatic sanctions that you
had sanctions on Russia under Biden.
Try to escalate them even more than under Biden and see what happens. Because give me a solution then. Sitting back and just stepping away from the war and saying, oh, Ukraine, fend for yourself. To me, that's not right.
To try to persuade Vladimir Putin to accept a ceasefire, to unfortunately keep the territory that they've gained, and commit to allowing the rest of Ukraine to be defended by European countries.
And what should we say in response to them flying drones over and having them strike down by NATO over Polish territory? Should we say nothing? Because Trump hasn't said much about that. Should we not say don't do that to our ally?
I'm incredibly frustrated with the Russian government. The reality is there's not a lot we can do because Russia is in such a strong bargaining position because they were winning this war throughout the course of the Biden administration when peace was an option that was overlooked by the previous presidency because Biden was committed to defending Ukraine to the last man, giving them whatever they needed, and fighting this out. And now Ukraine is losing. They're in a difficult position, and the incentive for Russia to negotiate is extremely low. We should keep trying to do that. I am not optimistic that it will succeed, but they should keep doing it because there's no other option. The only other realistic option to stop the entire country from being conquered is all-out war, which we are not willing to do. This kind of tough guy rhetoric, stop coddling them, be meaner to him, sanction him, it's not going to make a difference. I don't believe it's going to make a difference.
But money talks the loudest, right? And so if we are tightening the wallets,
Europe would need to cut off at a minimum accepting Russian energy.
Across the board, if we figure out all the ways. But my point is that you can request a lot of Europe, who's requesting a lot of the U.S., but the U.S. can also step up to the plate and they can come together with a realistic solution and actually go to Europe and say, we're putting a little bit of strong arming so that you can come to the table realistically. Because you're just saying exactly what you want. And I think bowing down to a dictator is not the position that the U.S. has taken in the past, and surely not a position that we should start taking in the future just because President Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, Trump wanting a Nobel Peace Prize is a good incentive, and if Trump decides to return to sanctions, that's his prerogative. I have very little faith that that's going to yield a different result at this point. Next up, Kamala Harris is not holding back in her new memoir, an excerpt from which was released this week. She had some harsh words about Biden deciding to run for re-election. Kind of harsh words. We will discuss how harsh they actually were right after the break. Hindsight is 2020. In 2025, former Vice President Kamala Harris is not holding back in her new memoir. In a first excerpt published in The Atlantic, Harris opens up saying she was in the worst position to tell President Biden not to run for re-election because it could make her look bad. Then she said this, "It's Joe and Jill's decision. We all said that like a mantra as if we'd all been hypnotized. Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness."
Now, Axios is reporting there's been mixed reaction from Biden aides on those comments. Some showing outrage, saying Harris is the reason she lost the election, not Biden. Others showing appreciation of her speaking out, agreeing the Bidens should never have run in the first place, or they shouldn't have agreed and then allowed Joe Biden to run if that was the case. Now, Harris does go on to defend Biden's mental capabilities. She calls Biden a, quote, smart guy, and, quote, on his worst day, he was more deeply knowledgeable, more capable of exercising judgment, and far more compassionate than Donald Trump on his best. But at 81, Joe got tired. That's when his age showed in physical and verbal stumbles. Harris is gearing up for a 15-city book tour later this month.
And much later, she's gearing up for a run for the presidency, is what I
assume,
based on this. This excerpt left much to be desired, in my opinion. It was unfortunately, very just characteristic of Kamala Harris in general. It was very boring. It was kind of wishy-washy. It was not strongly anti-Biden in that her commentary, as we just said there, this was not particularly harsh. Biden is not a popular figure. Democrats should be throwing him under the bus, and many are. She's still not doing that. She also doesn't just full-throatedly defend the decision for him to run re-election. She's, again, it's so characteristic of her. She's trying to have it both ways. She's trying not to offend anyone. Biden's aides are, some of them, offended. Who cares? These people are liars. They covered up that the president was incapable of being the president. They were trying to drag his body over the finish line. Like, these people are utterly discredited. No one wants to hear from them again. That Kamala Harris is still kind of afraid to offend them I think, reflects poor political judgment that she has demonstrated all along. So I was underwhelmed.
I'm actually gonna have a hot take. I'm extremely annoyed with this, for a totally different reason than you, because we are in like the fifth quarter. You should have said all this stuff back in the day when people were running and saying, what do you want to do? How do you want to separate yourself from President Biden on the campaign trail? His terrible economy, his terrible policies on immigration. You just sat there and just like didn't say anything, said, oh, his policies, you stand by them. You and Tim Walz went on the campaign trail, said nothing different from Biden, and then lost the election. And now you have all these things to say that I'm assuming in the book about the different policies you would have put forward, how you would have changed. It's just like way too little too late. And then this feels like a pile on, because like I said to you, Joe Biden has cancer now. He stepped out of office. You got Karine Jean-Pierre writing a book and switching parties. You got Jake Tapper, who was all about Biden, writing a book and just saying that he's, incompetent. You got Trump doing what Trump does all the time and piling on. Like, what? This is a little bit insane to me, that it's like people are picking the easiest target and the weakest target, as opposed to the moment where the Democratic Party decided to shove Joe Biden down people's throats and make him the candidate, as opposed to Bernie Sanders or somebody that was much more widely popular.
Someone useful and vigorous.
But even if it wasn't Bernie Sanders, it wasn't Biden, right? We all knew that, but it still was the fact that people thought, okay, better than Trump, but they tried to do that same thing twice. And the fact that you allowed Jill Biden, who has no actual political standing, to be that vocal in the process, and no Democrat said anything, even if it didn't want to be Kamala because it looks self-serving, to me, this is ridiculous. And I'm just like so annoyed that now everybody's so retrospective and can figure out what went wrong when people were calling Trump all these dramatic names like dictator, and like even today the protesters calling him Hitler. It's like, so if the Democratic Party has called these things like modern day Gestapo and still saying these things, I mean, we do segments in the last 2 months on some of these things, then how was the plan to do nothing and say something afterwards to write a book to make money?
Well, that's what they always do. You save your best material for the book.
And the trust is missing too. Like we talk about that. The trust in the Democratic Party is missing. And so how is this going to help with
the
trust?
low position the Democratic Party in is due entirely to it's of Joe Biden's making. That's why I don't feel like it's unfair to pile on him. You're right. I also don't enjoy really sticking it to an old man who has cancer, but he chose this when he decided to run for re-election. He should have been talked out of that by Jill Biden, by Hunter, by his aides and associates, this people he's surrounded with. But they were sycophants. They were, Grima Wormtongue whispering in his ear.
Yes,
they should have said, "You cannot do this for another 4 years." He couldn't even do it for the rest of that time, but certainly not for another 4 years. Everything that has gone wrong for the Democratic Party is downstream of that uniquely bad decision to run for re-election. When he said from the outset that he was going to be a transformational figure, he was going to allow for a transformation to take place, transitional figure, in the Democratic Party make the way for new leadership, and then he just totally reneged on that.
And he would have totally been looked at as this almost like icon-like figure, because he moved out of the way to create a space and built up a newer, fresher voice. Even if that was Kamala, there were opportunities to build her up during your presidency to make it so that she's a viable candidate. But what happened was what she's alleging in her book is that they constantly stifled any good news reports about her and didn't elevate anything that came out that was actually worth talking about, like things that she was doing overseas besides making gaffes or fumbling on words. Like they just allowed those news stories to run and didn't correct it with right information because she was outshining.
And that is so, it's so whiny. This excerpt is whiny. She complains that she doesn't get enough comm support from Biden's team, but she has her own team. It's like,
yeah, but you can't
you gotta stand on your own two legs here.
You can't you know how it goes. It's almost like the royal family in politics, right? Which is why Biden was even the candidate, right? There's an order, and maybe this is just on the Democratic side because I haven't looked into. I think Trump skipped the line, so he broke that kind of that up a little bit. But there are people who are expected to be in succession, and you're supposed to wait your turn. Like it happened with Hillary and Obama. It's like Obama skipped his turn. The Democratic
Party's problem is the wait your turn.
Agreed.
Philosophy. But she never tried to accomplish. She had to do something on her own. Like, you're right. Look at all these Republican conservative figures who just go out and turn themselves into stars if they have talent by just talking to people, by being on podcasts, by introducing themselves. They're not waiting for someone else to say, "Oh, here's a podium. Are you going to? Here's what we want. Here's what you're supposed to say." They just do it.
Well, I don't think that's how it goes in the presidency.
She's the most scripted and uncomfortable political figure.
For figures for people who are in the podcast space or voices, that's one thing. But I don't
Vice
think
President
J.D.
will do a
Vance
job.
is not skipping over Trump in anything that he does. He's out there talking about the big, beautiful bill because I believe he was asked to do that. He's out there being very vocal and sending out his tweets because, they're agreed
But he
upon
doesn't
that he can
need
speak
Trump's
on
help
these things.
to be an effective voice for conservative politics and for the Republican Party.
But if something came
He's
down
out
of like,
there-
don't try to, maybe let's just be quiet right now. You think Vance is going to be like, nah, I'm still going to go out there.
No, Vance is going to do whatever Trump
Exactly.
tells him to do, obviously,
So that's what I mean.
but
I think
she's
Kamala's
mad-
suggesting that.
She's mad she didn't get support. They didn't give her opportunities. They didn't, and that when she got criticized, that they didn't step in to help her. That's the kind of thing that seems just very weak to me, reflective of not a strong political sensibility or comfort being involved in the daily skirmish of politics. I don't think she's cut out for this, but I think she has every intention of running for president again. And
You think in the next election she's going to run again?
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay, I thought maybe she would just sit this one out.
Why would she do? Well, this is not what it sounds like to me in the book.
Well, I'm just saying, based on the electoral votes that Biden won, and for me, Biden was largely not somebody who I thought should run again. But the first time he won, I understand
She
why.
thinks she was
leading
robbed.
into
She
the
thinks if
pandemic,
she had
more than 107
that
days,
she would have
she would've-
won. Even though the polls suggest,
Well,
she declined in popularity.
And my
over
only
the course of
issue with that was that Kamala did put her name in the hat against Joe Biden to be president, and she didn't even rank when it came down to who's going to be the front runner as the candidate. So people have to remember historically, and I'm objectively looking at this, wanting to break the barrier of having a woman president, wanting to break the barrier of having a woman of color be president. These are all things that will happen because Kamala was wholly required to do the job, not because of DEI. I just want to be clear, but I would like to see those things happen
That's why
because
she was
people
picked.
are, no, I think that people are wholly acceptable to be a candidate, whether they're of color or not. But I would love to see those barriers be broken because people are inspired by seeing that. But the conversation is not even about that. It's just the principle of you have to also come with a strategy and a plan and a laid out perspective on how you would lead. And whether she was given the opportunity prior or after, she had all the opportunities when she was running against Biden to lay that out. And the American public didn't choose her as a front runner. And so to me, that's concerning to go back into this again when Democrats lost so bad in November.
Well, next up, Elon Musk is not the richest man on earth anymore. We'll tell you more. That's coming up next. Elon Musk is back in Palo Alto, back from his side quest, as he put it recently, to fix Washington, D.C. During an appearance at the All In podcast, Musk took a less than optimistic tone when describing the trajectory of the U.S. government. Take a look.
That was a hell of a side quest.
That was a good side. Any lessons from your time in Washington, D.C.?
The government is basically unfixable. If you look at our national debt, which is insanely high, the interest payments exceed the Defense Department, War Department budget. And they keep rising. So if AI and robots don't solve our national debt, we're toast.
And it might be good for Musk to be back at work. He briefly lost his title of the world's richest person. According to Bloomberg's wealth tracker published Wednesday, the tech giant got knocked off the top by Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison. The 81-year-old's wealth jumped $89 billion to $383.2 billion Wednesday due to Oracle's surge in the market. I need $1 of that. But as markets closed, Musk was back on top with a net worth of $384.2 billion. These numbers are so astronomical. I don't even know why we're debating. It's like richest, just put the list out. If you have more than 100 million, call it a day.
They're very rich. Good for them.
I kind of feel sad about Elon Musk being this discouraged by government. It's almost like...
Welcome to the club, pal. Yes, I'm sad.
He's literally
too,
laughing a sad laugh.
Yeah.
We are really deeply in debt. But you know what? A lot of... I feel like there's such a good old boys club in Washington that when Elon Musk came, it's almost like people are chuckling behind his back to watch him leave with his tail tucked in this way, which is if his ideas were genuine and he actually wanted to bring down our debt, because a lot of things that he did, I think, were a little bit reckless when he decided which programs he's going to cut. And we debated about that.
That's how you bring down the debt.
Several,
if you cut programs.
I know. We talked about several things that he did. I think he started in the wrong place. It skipped Congress, and then they implemented a lot of things.
Also, then they put it all back.
Yeah. So I think that the way he went about stuff was a bit knee-jerk reaction. But if he's able to amass that much wealth as an individual with several ideas for companies, then I think it's worth having his perspective in government, which is not the best at obviously running businesses, to be in this much debt.
Elon tried to do something that no one has ever done before and probably will never do again. He tried to make the government spend less money. He tried to make it a little smaller. Nobody ever does. They talk about doing that. Republicans have said that for years.
For my whole lifetime.
Limited government. We're going to limit that government. But nobody actually ever does it. Elon came in and he was like, yeah, that's done. That's gone. That's canceled. He was going to do it. It was happening. I couldn't believe my eyes. Before my very eyes. The thing Republicans have sworn to do, he was actually doing. Unfortunately,
the straw that broke the camel's back was
what?
The big, beautiful bill, which was also implemented by all Republicans.
At the time that he's trying to shrink the government, the Republicans, who have sworn that they've wanted to do that for decades, my entire life,
clapped him up in the Oval Office.
At the same time he was actually cutting it, they were putting together a bill to spend more money than ever that they voted through, that made him very upset, and his time ran out, and now he's not in this role anymore. But maybe it's better, because I too think robots and AI are the future, and
if they're programmed neutrally.
What do you mean neutrally?
Not to have bias of Elon Musk, like Grok has been programmed. I would love them to just be programmed neutrally and find the exact root of the cause of the debt and weed it out, not based on social issues that Musk personally disagrees with. But I'd love to see if AI can fix our debt, but not just in a biased way. Because maybe AI can actually be neutral. AI can take all the perspectives of all the people in Congress that have all these ideas how to bring down the debt and actually see which one is actually effective and not just rhetoric on the campaign trail. Because what I learned is that a lot of Republicans don't actually care about bringing down the debt. A lot of fiscal conservatives that I've agreed with over my career actually didn't care about it as much, because this big, beautiful bill was a disaster for anybody who calls themselves a fiscal conservative, which very few
agree.
Republicans
I don't
spoke
like
out
it,
about.
and neither does Elon Musk. But he's getting back to work, hopefully to make us a multi-planetary species, the goal of Elon Musk that I share. That does it for us on Rising Live. Thanks so much for watching, and please look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can listen to podcasts. See you later.